All right, today is April 6th, 2012. My name is Latasha Wilson, and I'm with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State University Library. I am in Tipton, Oklahoma today at the home of the Killebrews, and I am talking with Sam Killebrew today as part of the Spotlighting Oklahoma Oral History Project. So thank you for having me here.
Yes.
Would you mind telling me when and where you were born?
12th, 33, McAllister, Oklahoma.
And were you born at home?
At home, 7 miles in the country.
Okay. What were your parents' names?
Tom and Kay Killebrew.
And were you the first child?
I was the third.
Were there more after you?
There were twins and one more. Yes, there were 3 more.
So 6 total?
6.
Well, what was your home like that you were, where you lived early on? Was it a farm?
Yes, we lived on the farm. My dad worked for a Gulf Oil Company.
What did he do for them?
He was, he would go out on these excursions, digging pipelines and everything. That is how we ultimately came to Tipton. He was transferred here to the oil field out west of town.
Okay. So what year did you all end up moving here?
Actually in Tipton, 1937.
Okay. Did you have family in McAllister?
Yes. Both sides of in fact, my mother and dad's families lived a mile apart in the country.
How would they come to the area? Your grandparents? Do you know where they'd come from to get to McAllister?
Tennessee. I think Tennessee was from my mother's side, and my dad's side I really don't know.
And then your parents met because they lived a mile apart?
Yes, they met there and were married. And I had a lot of relatives both sides. I could go one day. I would go when we'd visit. I would play with relatives on mother's side, cousins. And the next day I'd go with on my dad's side and play with a lot of cousins.
So when you moved to Tipton, were you able to go back to McAllister to visit?
We would go on a vacation every year. Yes, we'd go back there. That's where we went.
Well, what was Tipton like when you moved here in 1937?
Well, it was a booming town. You know, each small town in that era was self-sufficient with your doctors, with your druggists, your grocery stores, your car dealers, furniture stores, 5 and dime. They were self-sufficient. You didn't really need to go anywhere else unless something major. And life was really great back in that era. Of course, I was 4 years old at that time, but I grew up here.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you started the school?
Well, let's see. Because of the way my birthday fell, I was 5 years old.
Oh.
So when we graduated, I was the youngest one in the class because of that.
And did you start to first grade? They didn't have kindergarten?
Yes, that's right. In fact, all of my siblings they didn't start. They graduated from here.
Okay. So where in town did you live when you moved here?
Various places. We rented, for the first 3 years we rented. Then my dad bought a house on Rawson Street, and about 1940 that's where we lived, and then we moved to the south part of town a little later.
So were there a lot of people working with the oil business?
Back then there was, yes. There was probably 4 or 5 or 6 families that were permanent residents here, and some of them lived out there on the site of the oil field. It was a pump station is what it was.
Okay.
They relayed oil from various areas.
And was there a lot of oil in this area?
Well, back then, that was the only field I actually knew that produced oil is in Jackson County mostly. There was one field south of Tipton, and but most of it was across the river.
Well, I think of oil fields being kind of rowdy. Was Tipton?
Well, there weren't that many people that affected. There were, they were for that era pretty good paying jobs in '37. I think $4 a day. That was pretty good pay back then. But all of them had large families, so I think it probably took $3.95 a day to live. So it wasn't real prosperous.
Well, what were other people who lived in Tipton at the time doing?
This was farming area, strictly farming. The whole economy was farming. In fact, the school, when the school buses would come in from your outlying areas, your rural areas, there were probably as many kids living in the country as there were in town. They would have 6 or 7 school buses would just unload bus loads of kids, because probably on every 80 acres there was a family living. And most of the families were pretty large then.
Well, what was school like?
Well, it was fun. Now, in that day and age, it had to be good because you didn't have any options. I mean, all the kids, you were supposed to go, and you did, and it was fun. You had your classmates, and most everyone was of the same economic strata. Everyone was about the same, and it was very enjoyable.
How many kids were in your class about?
When we started, well, I had 2 first grades. There were probably about 20 or 21 or 2 in each class. There were 2 sections.
And then when you graduated?
There were 19 is all.
What year did you graduate?
1951.
Okay. Well, were you active in sports or any clubs and organizations throughout school?
We had, my dad had 17 cows. This was before we had electric milkers. We delivered milk in Tipton. It was whole milk, Jersey milk with a big cream line was the thing. And a lot of cholesterol. and we delivered 150 quarts of milk a day. And Dad said, you boys, like I say, I had 3 brothers, said you can play one sport, pick your sport. I wasn't talented in any sport except football. You didn't have to be talented, so I chose football. That was my favorite sport.
When did you start playing?
Well, when I was sophomore, probably.
And Tipton had some, or does still have, pretty good sports teams.
Very good, yes.
So did you do much traveling in football back then?
The furthest we went back then in those old buses, the furthest we had to travel was 90 miles. We thought that was really a long way.
Where would that be to?
Erie, Oklahoma.
So how long did your father continue working for Gulf Oil?
Let's see, he worked, let me see, probably till about 1942, and he had received a mandate. We were being transferred to Hobbs, New Mexico.
Oh.
He said he had been there one time and he didn't want to raise his family in that environment. So that day he quit. With then 5 kids. He quit his job.
Wow. Did he have any idea what he was going to do?
I really don't know, but he worked for the public service company here as a bookkeeper. Then he worked in a grocery store and milked the cows.
What was the grocery store at the time called?
It was H&H Grocery.
H&H. And you all lived in town?
It was, uh, it was out of town, right across the street, city limit, and of course now the city limits have been expanded, but we were, you might say we did live in town, but we were outside the city limits.
So there was room for all your cows?
Yes.
Right
yes.
there. How many did you have?
We had 17. We milked
Okay.
17.
Wow. And did all the kids help?
Yes.
What were some of your other chores?
Well, the thing that you would do, you would get up early, you would go milk, you would bottle the milk, then you would come in for breakfast, then you would go deliver the milk from the previous night that was in the cooler all over town. You would bring them 150 milk bottles back. You would hand wash them and stack them. Then it was 8 o'clock. That was chores. Then you went to work. Chopping cotton, pulling cotton, whatever. Mm-hmm. Working in a grocery store. But that was just chores, you know.
Where would the milk bottles come from?
Well, we'd buy them empty bottles, I guess, sure, because there weren't any paper cartons. That was the main way of conveyance, was all glass.
And so every day you hand washed those 150?
A big sink that had 3 vats and a large drain board, and we'd turn the radio on and sing and have a good time.
Do you remember any radio programs in particular?
Well, it was KELT, Electra, Texas. They played good music. Of course, it was, I guess you say top 10 or what. It wasn't strictly Western at all. It was just a good station. We could get it.
What were the milk bottles capped with?
Well, we had caps. In fact, we still have one. It says Killebrew's raw milk. That was raw milk. You know, that was before homogenized or pasteurizing process became popular and this there. And people really liked it because, like I say, they judged the milk by the cream line.
And how big was that cream line normally?
Well, sometimes we milked Jersey cows, and that cream line was sometimes a third, between the third and a half of the milk bottle. So this milk that would milk, say at night, we bottled it and we put it in the cooler where the water came up certain far. And then the next morning, we would take that out and load it in the pickup, and we'd put the fresh milk in there and deliver that at night, but evening. So when it was cold, that cream line really looked good. And the people, it was 20 cents a quart. And the people you deliver to, if you pass by your regular customer and they had 2 milk bottles, they would be washed, and it would be 40 cents in the bottle to pay for it. Cash and carry.
And would they normally leave these on their front porch?
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit more about the cooling system with the water?
Oh, this was pretty typical. And there were a lot of dairies and a lot of farms, and it was just a large cooler that had water in it, metal, and you just set the metal frame. See, these are wire, we call them wire or metal cases that you put the milk in. You set it down, and it would immerse up to about half or more in cold water, and that's how you kept it.
So people in their homes, how quickly did they need to drink the milk before it went?
Oh, it was just like milk today. I mean, of course, it probably didn't stay on their porch 5-10 minutes before it was in the refrigerator.
Okay, so they did have refrigerators.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And did you use a cream separator ever?
No, because we sold that cream in the milk.
How long did you all sell milk?
Let's see, I would say from 45 until 52 or 3, 1952 or 3. And then all the small dairies were going out of business. And then your milk started coming in cartons, homogenized and all, and it was just the death knell for the small, There wasn't a place for that in the market anymore.
How many people were selling milk in Tipton when you were?
We were the only ones that did that, but there were several around that sold to the dairies. They'd come around and pick it up. There was probably 3 or 4 others in the area that they would have these big cans, these, I don't know what size, 5 or these large cans.
Mm-hmm.
They would, that's the way they sold it. They didn't hand deliver it like we did.
And did you just put the milk on a truck?
Back into the pickup, and here we go.
So after 1953 or 52.
Dad sold all the dairy equipment and got rid of the cows.
And then what did he do?
I think he worked for the Tipton home, kind of as a carpenter. I was gone from 53 till 61, so I don't really remember every day what he did do.
Mm-hmm.
He farmed. He had an 8-acre farm, and
What were his crops?
cotton, alfalfa.
Well, what did you do after high school?
I went to college at Cameron Junior College for 2 years, and then I finished at Abilene Christian in Abilene, Texas. I graduated. I had to go to Texas to find a wife. And I met her at ACC. I met her. She was from Sonora, Texas.
Okay. And what was her name?
Lois Lou Lomax.
What did you major in?
Believe it or not, I majored in agriculture because I was the only one of the boys that liked dairy business. I really liked it. I enjoy fooling for cows, and I liked the merchandise, selling milk and all. And so when I graduated in 51, well, without any counselors, we didn't have counselors to see how adapted you'd be to any certain field. You just pick what you want to go. Art, dairy, farm, whatever, So I chose that. And then, of course, when Dad sold the dairy and it went out, well, I just went ahead and graduated down there. But that wasn't my first love at all. It was dairying or farming. It was grocery business.
And did you get experience selling the milk through that? And did you also work at a grocery?
I worked in a grocery store continuously from I was 12 years old till I quit in 1991.
Okay. What did you do when you were 12?
I started sacking groceries and working in the store here at the H&H Grocery.
And would you carry the groceries out to people's cars?
Yes.
And then what did you move up to? What was your next job?
When I went to college, I worked in the grocery store in Lawton, and then when I went to ACC, I worked on the campus, and when my wife really got serious about marrying me, I needed to make plans, so I started working in a grocery store, and I went ahead and graduated. And when we were married, I still worked. It was for a large chain of stores, and I worked 6 years. Then we moved back to Tipton and bought an old-time grocery store that had been in existence for years here in 1961.
Okay. And what was that called?
Hubble Grocery.
Was it Were you nervous?
No. We were really anticipating it because this is what I always wanted to do.
How many other groceries were in existence here
There
at
were
the time?
three other stores, two large ones in this town. This was a small store, but it had been a family store for years and years and years.
What were the large ones, the names?
Walker Grocery and Right Price Grocery.
So H&H, did it still exist?
It sold to Walkers.
Okay. So, was Hubble open when you bought it?
Yes.
So you just took over?
Yes, we just bought one.
What was one of the first big changes you made, or did you make any big moves in the beginning?
In 2 years after I did, the custom back then was to sell groceries on credit. You would charge, people would come in and charge. Well, I didn't foresee the problem with that, but if you sell merchandise and you don't have any backup cash in the bank and you don't get paid right then, your shelves are going to be empty until they pay you so you can put something back on the shelf. And after 2 years, Lois and I knew that this wasn't going to work because you had to have a bankroll to be able to sell groceries. So we did the unthinkable. We went cash. We sold everything for cash. And our business boomed.
And because you took cash, you were able to put more on your shelves and provide.
Cheaper. More and better variety and very competitive because we started buying from co-ops and we bought we were a member of co-op in dairy products, your ice cream products, your bread, and of course the groceries too. We could buy probably as cheap as anyone, so we could pass the savings on to the customer and still make a profit. And people, one of the main things small towns people traded for on credit was convenience. You know, it was convenience, but if someone had misfortune and couldn't pay you, you just lost the money, so your shelf was empty. The cash flow wasn't there. But people were so receptive in this town. It was amazing. The first day that we opened and for cash, I had more money in the register than I'd ever had. It was a process of people getting the mindset of course, they paid cash in large towns, you know, your Uniteds and Safeways and so, but we were very fortunate. We had really great people here. And that enabled us to stay in business.
And you continued to own that store until when?
1991. For 30 years
And what happened in 1991?
Well, a fella from Michigan wanted to buy it, so we sold it to him.
So what happened with the other grocery stores, Walker and Right Price?
They weren't in existence then.
When did they fall off?
Probably 10 and 5 years respectively for the other two. Okay. Before we did.
Did you have shopping carts in your grocery store?
We also had something younger people have not heard of probably, a Ben Franklin store. Ben Franklin was a national famous variety store line, and we had one inside of our store. So we really...
So what are some examples of things that would be sold there?
Oh, all notions, your health and beauty supplies, tennis shoes, glasses, coffee pots, paint, whatever. It was we had that inside our store. It really worked out good.
Well, when did Tipton start seeing a decrease?
It actually started probably when we sold the store. In 91, there were 1,200 people in town, approximately. Then, 10 years later, there was 1,000 people. And now there are about 800. This doesn't count all the people that do not live in the country anymore. You don't have any country population at all. So that was, and farmers farming much, much more land than they ever have, and there's no more hand labor, which when we first came here, there was a lot of hand labor, such as pulling cotton, chopping cotton, and baling hay. All that is automatic now. So that was the demise of small farming communities.
Well, what was it like just being a business owner in general in Tipton over those years?
It was great because we were so fortunate. I was 27 years old and we worked for ourselves. Never did work for anyone else after that, except in reality you were working for the public. It was, we literally, and Lois would agree with me, we enjoyed the last day as much as we did the first day. So that was, we just really, we came along at the right time in history to be in business here in Tipton.
And dealing with the co-ops, were you able to carry any, like, products from nearby?
Well, no, the co-ops, now, a co-op is like Associated Grocers. This is what it was. It wasn't, it was like your canned goods, everything you had in the grocery store. It wasn't any fresh produce or anything like that. It was all, everything that came in the store, you were able to buy it, and it was your advantage to buy from a co-op. You could own it cheaper. It was the salvation for small grocers to be able to be like a farmer, being a co-op. He couldn't grow cotton and go out on his own and drive around the country to see what the best price he could get for his cotton. You know, you need to be in a co-op, and that's about what this was.
Does Tipton have a chamber of commerce?
Yes.
That you were involved with?
Yes, it had Chamber of Commerce, yes.
Were there many businesses that disappeared while you had your store?
In ensuing years, yes, when we came in 61, there were, I couldn't give you a count on how many businesses there were, but you can see how many there are now, and probably 90% of them are gone. Or maybe 95%. Because small agricultural towns have faded away. This is not startling. It's the evolution of business and the population movement from rural areas to the large cities. It's a natural chain of events. There's nothing anyone could do to make it go back or change it or stop it. That's just the...
Well, what do you see as the future for Tipton in that regard? Do you
think? About like it is now. We were fortunate here in school. We have an excellent school system here. We were, I think, I'm just off the top of my head, 2, 3, or 4 years ago, running around 250 students, and this year we're back up to 300. And that helps. And of course, your small towns are school and church oriented. That's about so everyone supports the school. We really have a good school system here.
And this weekend happens to be the
alumni banquet, the 85th annual banquet.
Wow. Have you kept count of how many you've been involved with?
No. But what do you figure, from 1951 to, what would it be, 61 years, yeah.
And you haven't missed many?
Oh yeah, I've missed some because when we had the store, that had, it was just busy weekend. Sometimes we didn't go. But we go now.
And it's quite an event.
Well, yes, it's about the same thing every time, but it's good to see people because the town will be full tomorrow. There won't be any. Tipton, no one leaves Tipton on Easter weekend. Everyone comes to Tipton.
Well, going back to the milk business, you told me how people would leave their money in the jars. Is that the main way, the primary way they would pay for the milk?
Well, it was just that was the way my dad and the customers did it, yes.
Did you or the person delivering the milk, or did someone keep a ledger?
I'm sure
this?
they didn't.
Okay.
My dad had a big, old-fashioned leather change purse. There used to be these little clasp ones like that. This was about that long. And he always had it full of money. It was change and all. We literally survived because of the dairy.
And what was your mom's role in all of
She
that?
tried to cook and keep all of the men's clothes and food on the table and make a garden and run the household and do everything. But she enjoyed it because that was her job. At one time, I had an older uncle living with us, so that would be, let's see, 4 boys, my dad 5, and him 6. So she had no help. We would go milk and come back into the house before we delivered the milk. There would be gravy and biscuits, homemade biscuits and eggs and everything, and it wasn't anything special. That's what mothers are supposed to do. Wash your clothes and everything.
Did she sew too?
Oh, sure, she did. She really relished being a housewife.
Did you all have ice cream very often?
Well, if we froze it, we did. And then after World War II, they started putting out an air-puffed, vegetable-based concoction they called Melorine. Very cheap. Well, we ate that and thought it was really good. It tasted like ice cream.
How did the war affect the community here?
Okay, the war affected because there was a demand for everything as far as products, as far as gasoline, as far as tires, as far as food, as far as housing, because a lot of times if a couple was living, say, in some other town and the husband all of a sudden was drafted into the Army, maybe they had 1 child or 2 child, it was better for the mother to move back to Tipton to be around her folks and her family. So the living quarters, it was just pushed to, it was a shortage of places to live. The town was full of people. Full of people.
Mostly women and children.
And then much more so when the war was over, because a lot of these same men came back, and since farming was the main economic factor here, well, they thought that they're going to be a farmer. And here was kids that live in home, some of them 18, 19 years old. They really didn't have a chance to determine what they wanted in life, but they were going to be a farmer. Some of them made it, some of them didn't.
And then there were some Germans in the area.
Well, they were all in a pen. This was the latter part of the war. There was a shortage of labor because, like I say, all the young men were gone. They were just gone. They were all fighting in different branches of service. So, what to do with these German prisoners? They shipped them inland to these farm areas such as Tipton, and there were, I think, 2 or 3 camps here in Oklahoma, I think. I don't know where for sure. But they would harvest the crops. Remember, this was, there was no mechanical harvest. It was all by hand. If cotton was harvested, it was all hand pull. The hay was all stacked, bale at a time, thrashing machine, everything had to be fed into the thrashing machine. So as extensive farm labor was by hand. So they got these Germans and they kept them here in this camp, and they paid them 80 cents a day for working. They had it pretty good. Warm place to sleep, plenty of food, and got paid.
And where was this camp located?
It was on my dad's property. In fact, he bought about 8 acres right. It's up the street. And there was this big barn. It had been the Gulf Oil Company warehouse. In fact, it was a distributing point for Gulf products. They were the jobber for Gulf stations. And then in addition to the drilling and pumping forces they had going west of town, and but when that ceased, well, he bought that, and it had this big wire fence around it. It was 7 feet tall, and just about what the government needed, and he rented that to the government, and they turned it into a camp. And he really got rich. He rented it to the government for $50 a month, which would be about, what, $500 now, maybe?
How long did that last?
About 1.5 years. Very quickly it went.
And do you know how the government came to make this contact with your father?
No, I was just 12 years old. But probably some of the town officials or the mayor or the bankers were trying to figure out a way, because, like I say, farming was the number one factor helping the economy. So people wanted to look out to be sure the crops were harvested. And they were there, and it was quite an adventure for 1.5 years.
Well, what do you remember about these?
Oh, I remember a lot because it was on our property. I remember the day that the troop train came and pulled the siding out here. It stopped, and I was in town, and I started to go home. Well, on every street in the southwest part and the east part of town, there were armed guards, soldiers. It was cordoned off where you couldn't pass. But I had to, because this is where I lived. So I got to go through it. And then, too, we thought we were really privileged because we would go across the field. We had a path warrant to the school, and we would come within 75 yards from the camp every time we came and went. So we didn't know much what was going on, but we got to see the guard towers and the guys out there in it, and it was pretty exciting, I guess.
So they built those guard towers, and
Oh yeah, they had 3 guard towers, tall, and they had lights down the fences, just like you'd see in these old movies, Stalag 17 or some old movies, yeah, just like that. And if a prisoner didn't want to work, I remember that they had a big barbed wire, shiny bright wire, kind of a pin, looked like, and if they refused to work, well, they'd put them in this pen and give them bread and water. And it gets hot in the summertime, just in a barbed wires for your shade.
oh goodness.
And they'd change a day or two, they'd go back to work, but it was and quickly it was gone. The war was over.
And did they take down the guard towers and
yes.
things like that?
Well, my dad salvaged a lot of that, because some of these wooden sidewalks, or they made them out of ammunition cases and pallets, because when it would rain, they had tents. They had, I think, 40 tents. There were, I think, about 6 in each tent, and each one of them had a stove, because it used to get cold here. And they They just pulled them all up and left.
Hmm.
And Dad took the big long tin building that you see in the picture, and he made apartments out of it because there was a need for apartments after World War II.
Hmm. In that same location?
Population boom.
Hmm.
A lot of kids were coming on the way when.
Hmm.
So it was interesting, and still we have people. There will be people such as you, maybe writing on history of prison camps or something, and every 2 or 3 years since our name is associated, the Killebrews owned it, and we're getting to be the oldest people in town. Well, we get calls, and it's interesting. They want to know the history of it, and we can still. You have access to it. We show up and go over there. It's a derelict building now, but it's owned by the city. That property is.
Okay. Well, did you ever feel endangered or nervous about?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't. Maybe some people that had sense or older, maybe they did, but I was 12 years old. That was a big adventure.
And did the government ship in guards too?
Oh, they were guards, yes.
So did they live in town, or did they stay
Well,
out there too?
there was 2 or 3 houses, right, little small houses, and I guess that's where they lived. I guess I really didn't know. 2 of the guards, at least 2, married Tipton girls. They
Really?
got from here, yes, and lived here till they died.
Huh.
But it was just a fast-paced thing. World War II, things were happening, and it was a big deal. But then, really, it wasn't a big deal too, because things changed so quickly in history. As far as the war.
What was that prison camp called?
POW camp. German prisoner of war camp. That was
And for helping out with the farming, how was that orchestrated? Did they go to different farms in the area?
Right, they had large, I'd call them cotton trailers. The tractors or pickups that pull, and they were large sideboards, just like you'd load cotton. And they'd load them up with them, and they'd take them out. And what was interesting, when they'd come in at night, of course, they passed right by our house, and they'd be singing. They'd be singing. They could sing good. It was interesting.
Did you pick up any German vocabulary words while they were here?
No.
Well, I've actually talked with a few Germans that were in prisoner of war camps in the United States and came back to the U.S. after the war was over and have lived here since.
They were treated well. Much better than the way ours were.
Have you ever encountered any Germans that were here that have come back?
No, I haven't. Well, see, they would be dead because I'm 78 and they were probably 21, 25, so they'd have to be up high 90s. So.
But over the years, no one...
never did. But it really worked well as far as harvesting cotton and such. I did work in the field with one when I was 12 years old. We were thrashing hay, but there was 1 or 2 there, but it was just like another person. You didn't really were in awe or anything. It was just, sure, they talked a different language, but they must have been the trustees.
Well, what has kept you in this area, or in Tipton, over the years?
Well, of course, this is our home, but the reason we wanted to move back, football has been a big thing in Tipton sports. And when we were living in Abilene, Texas, my brother Jack would say, "Oh, I wish you could have been here Friday night. We played Snyder and for the district championship, and we won in the last 2 minutes. I thought, oh my, I'm missing out on that. And we thought, well, you know, I wish we were living back there, because it made it sound exciting, and said, after the game went by, Mother had a hot cherry pie, and you know, I thought, goodness, we're missing out on this. Lois did not have any family. She was the only child, and so we thought about the grocery business. Her dad, well, she grew up in the grocery business. Her dad had in Texas, Sonora, Texas, so it wasn't a big change for her as far as that, and we just wanted to come back to a smaller town. That's what we wanted, and we sure don't regret it.
How have you, or what's your opinion on how the grocery business has changed over the years?
It's all Mr. Walmart now, like it or not. I mean, that's, some of us who are older resent the fact there are no more small, successful supermarkets or towns.
Some of us who are younger do too.
But you've got to think, this is the evolution of business. This is the way it's happening. People, when they went from little mom and pops to larger supermarkets, they probably railed against that also, because they're running. But it's just the way things are.
Do you think it will continue and the stores will
Yes.
get bigger and bigger?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, one stop. Yeah, the people love it.
Mm-hmm.
People love it. There's a danger in that sometimes. If you do not know your prices, you will be paying too much, and unwittingly you think you'll be getting a good deal when in reality you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these large producers, you do not get as quality produce that you do in the smaller supermarkets, like say United or your local supermarkets. Sometimes they have better produce and at a better price, because big does not necessarily mean cheap. And the service in larger one, you're going to sacrifice getting waited on with real friendly people, because most of the time not. Some cases, sure, it depends on the local manager. But you don't get as much personal attention.
So where do you buy your groceries these days?
We cherry pick. Do you know what that means?
A little here and a little there?
Whoever has the best specials and where we have coupons.
Do you usually go to Altus?
Go to Altus. It's nearly prohibitive here, because there's not much variety, and it's pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we buy at Sam's, we reluctantly, in fact, we didn't buy a membership, we had one given to us as a gift, and we'll buy, say, large quantity of meat, such as boneless pork loins or such as that, you know. Since I was a butcher, we'll cut them up in the way we wanted, and I have a grinder, we'll grind our own hamburger meat, and about lean cuts, such as boneless rump roast, and we'll go ahead and grind it and package it ourselves, because it's much leaner than what you could buy, and we save money that way.
Where did you learn your butchering skills?
When I got a grocery store, I knew nothing about it, but you learn.
Mm-hmm. Did you have someone teach you, or you had to?
Yes, we had a
Okay.
butcher.
Well, what does Oklahoma mean to you?
I love Oklahoma because it's a small inland state. We don't have some of the problems that the large, next to the water, the ocean or the ports and all that system. And you might say, well, you're thinking small, but really you can seem like you could control your destiny. Oklahoma has a very low unemployment rate, one of the lowest anywhere, and There's a lot of wide open spaces, and it's a lot of freedoms that you have. And then two, I like sports, and Oklahoma excels in sports. And if you want vacations, you can go to the water, go to eastern Oklahoma, a lot of fishing and lakes, and I like it. I don't think we have problems that some of the other places have.
Well, is there anything else we should talk about?
I don't know. I don't have any questions. It's probably up to each individual really where they want to live. It's whatever you're seeking for. Some people, my friends, would not live in Oklahoma or a small town. It's up to each individual what they're looking for. The churches are generally pretty strong in some of the smaller towns, and it is here in Tipton, and that's one of the prerequisites we have. And then we have the Tipton Children's Home, so there's always a lot of excitement going on here in this town.
And about how many kids are at the
About
Tipton home
57. We're licensed for 58.
now? Okay.
What I mean by the DHS, they license you as far as the square footage you have for the residents and such as that. Although we receive no finances all from the government in any form or fashion, we wouldn't take that because we would lose our independence if we did.
What is your role currently with the Tipton home?
I'm on the board of directors out there.
How long have you served on that?
Well, there's one thing, like it or not, the Tipton home was set up in 1924. The board of directors were selected from the elders of the Church of Christ. And if you're an elder, you don't have a choice. You're automatically. So I've been on 20 years.
Okay. So you've been an elder for 20 years? And have you seen the home change a lot over that period of time?
Yes, it's changed. Child care goes through different phases. Right now, the politically correct thing is they like foster homing, as far as legislators and different weird associations, and but we do have the resident care, and it's the only thing I've known as far as taking care of kids. But it's if we can get kids at an early age, we can really do well. Sometimes when you get children that are 13, 14 years old that have been exposed to some of the bad things, it's sometimes their culture is hard to change. But if you can get them at an early age, then too, if you can get a family, 2 or 3 of the same family kids, if the DHS deems that they need to be here, well, you can do some good. We've had some great people that graduated from there.
And tonight is the annual reunion?
Tonight is just the reception.
Reception.
Tomorrow is the official reunion at the home. There'll be a lot of people.
How many people do you estimate will be in town for the home-related events?
Well, it's hard to separate the school and that too, because I'll probably, I don't know. The Tipton home is in its 88th year, which is pretty unusual for a child-based care organization without any federal money or wanting any.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It keeps Lois and I younger.
Well, when history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
He enjoyed the benefits of living in a loving, small town and participate in activities. Because really, we wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Would you, Lois? A small town too. This is off the record. I guess you're still recording. But one thing about a small town, when people get older, they lose their spouse, their children are all gone, grandchildren, some other location. They can live and survive in a small town. Because we have neighbors that are 95, 86, and at church the other day on the front row were 4 people in the 90-year-old, and they were still living in their own homes. Now that's something.
Yeah.
If they lived in Oklahoma City, there's no way could they do that at all. And they're happy and they're active and they participate. Sure, they need help here and there, and but that's what we're here for.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for visiting with me.
Enjoyed it.